أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today we are going through the second last chapter, the draft constitution. And unlike previous chapters, I'm not going to go through a lot of detail because of the fact that it's something that you just read over and you'll gain some understanding. I'm going to just cover certain issues that, major issues that I'll cover. Otherwise, I'm just going to quickly summarize through it. And then if you wish to gain significantly more information and detail, you can search online Draft Constitution Hizb Tahrir. There's part 1 and part 2. It's a very extensive. There are 2 books. They amount to approximately about 1,000 pages in total. And it goes through all the evidences and all the details. In this book is just a brief summary of, just to give you an idea of the draft constitution. The actual constitution is much, much more detailed with all the evidence and the explanations in order to establish all the foundations of the entire state of the Khilafah, inshallah ta'ala. So, to begin, general rules. Article 1 talks about the Islamic Aqeedah as a foundation of the constitution of the state. Now, somebody might say, well, that sounds like Pakistan or sounds like Saudi Arabia. No, those are hypocrite, munafiq, if you want to call them, states. They are fake Islamic states. The Aqeedah is not the foundation of the constitution or the state, because if I were to say the foundation of my life is the Aqeedah of Islam, but I don't follow I make up my own laws. I invent a way of praying salah. I invent a way of doing business. I say that riba is halal, interest is halal. I say that marriage, it's not done with, mahar and offer and acceptance from the wali and so on. No, I think that women should be allowed to marry multiple husbands and so on. So would that mean that the Aqeedah is the foundation of my life? It's the foundation of who I am as a Muslim? No, I'd be a liar. I'd be a hypocrite. People would despise me and be sick of even the sight of me. So the states that say that the Islamic Aqeedah is the foundation of the state, in these disgusting lies that they try to dupe the Muslims in or with, these are fake Islamic states, and these are colonialist puppet regimes in order to trick Muslims into thinking that an Islamic government actually exists. And really, it's an insult to our intelligence. Any Muslim who falls for this is a fool and really should be embarrassed of themselves. Now, of course, we were raised in a very bad environment, so a lot of people fell for this stuff. But the bottom line is that this is a trick. The Islamic Aqeedah, when it's the foundation of the state, it's like it's the foundation of your own life. Everything you do, the hukm shari, and you only implement the hukm shari. That's when a person is being honest about the fact that the Islamic Aqeedah is the foundation of his life. And if a state only legislates with Islam, then the Aqeedah becomes the foundation of the state. Then it's true that the Aqeedah is the foundation of the state. Nothing is permitted to exist in the government structure, accountability, or any other aspect connected with the government that does not take the Aqeedah as a source, meaning that it's based on the concepts of Islam, it's based on the sources of law of Islam, and so on. The Aqeedah is also the source of the state's constitution and Shari'i canons, meaning all the laws. Nothing connected to the constitution or canons is permitted to exist unless it emanates from the Islamic Aqeedah. Article 2, the domain of Islam, Dar al-Islam, is that entity that applies the rules of Islam in life's affairs and whose security is maintained by Muslims. This particular point is really important in terms of understanding the difference between Dar al-Islam and Dar al-Kufr. The truth of the matter is, once you properly understand what a Dar is and Dar al-Islam versus Dar al-Kufr, you'll understand that the entire world today is Dar al-Kufr, including Saudi, Mecca and Medina, including Al-Quds, including all the lands, the Muslim lands. They are defined as Dar al-Kufr. Now, a person might say, oh my God, that's, are you saying everyone's a kafir? Are you saying that Mecca is a land of kufr? No. What we're saying is the dar is defined as something very specific. The dar is not how you feel about the place. It's not about the population of the people of the land. Even if 100% of the people of a land are Muslims, but the laws that are applied are not Islamic, then the dar, which is the definition of the status of the state. So a dar is the definition of the status of the state. And so Dar al-Islam is only the land that applies the laws of Islam, and the security of the land is in the hands of Muslims. If either of these two conditions are not met, then the land is Dar al-Kufr. So that means that if the laws of Islam are not applied as Dar al-Kufr, or if the laws of Islam are applied, but the military is a non-Muslim military, the protection of the land is in the hands of the kuffar, then it's not Dar al-Islam either. The way that we know this is there's a hadith from the Prophet ﷺ. It's a long hadith, but generally what it says is the Prophet ﷺ is sending the Sariya, the expedition of Usama bin Zayd, and he's telling him that when you come to a new land, call them to Islam. if they accept Islam from you, he's saying if they accepted Islam, they all became Muslim, then accept that from them and don't fight them. Don't question their iman or saying you're just saying this out of fear or anything like that. Accept their Islam and don't fight them. Then he says ثم ادعوهم إلى التحول من دارهم إلى دار المهاجرين, or التحول من دارهم إلى دار المسلمين. So he's saying that after they all accepted Islam, invite them to all switch their land from their land to the land of the Muslims, or the land of the immigrants, the muhajirin. And what that means is that even if you all become Muslim, you're still not considered to be Dar al-Islam, Dar al-Muhajirin, Dar al-Muslimin. The Dar status is not affected by you all becoming Muslims. Rather, it's only if you come under the authority of the Muslim Khilafah, the Muslim state, which was ruled by the Prophet ﷺ at the time. And so the situation is that when, and the hadith continues, by the way, and the Prophet ﷺ said, and if they accept this condition, that they can, because he doesn't say al-hijrah, he doesn't say to leave their land and come to our land. No, he says al-tahawwul, to change their land, to convert their land from their land to the land of the muhajirin, basically to fall under the authority of the state. And then he says, and if they do so, then they will have, it goes on, but it says they'll have from the spoils of war, and they'll have a number of other things that are related to being citizens of the state. And if they don't, then they will be treated as foreigners, but they will still be expected to implement the laws of Islam, but they will not receive basically the benefits of being a part of the state, which is basically basically welfare or the division of spoils or certain wealth that is given out by the state. So that clearly indicates that Dar al-Islam is defined by the laws of the land and the security of the land, and not the people who are Muslims. So when you look at Saudi Arabia does not implement Islam. They implement a few laws hypocritically to look like they're implementing Islam, but their currency system isn't Islamic, their government structure isn't Islamic, their border laws aren't Islamic, their land laws aren't Islamic, their contracts aren't Islamic. They deal with riba globally. Now they're bringing in all the zina and fahish and all this kind of stuff. It's very, very obvious that they're not Islamic government. The same for everywhere else in the Muslim lands. So the status of the land that's currently now over Mecca and Medina is Dar al-Kufr. We should be upset not about the fact that we're calling it Dar al-Kufr, the fact that it is Dar al-Kufr. We should be upset that a Kufr ruling system is ruling over Mecca and Medina. We should be angry about, just as angry as we are about the Zionists ruling over Palestine, we should be just as angry about Al Saud ruling over Mecca and Medina, because they're ruling our lands, the lands of Rasulullah ﷺ, and our first Qibla, and the land of Hijrah. They're ruling with kufr laws, just like every other land of the Muslim lands, including Palestine. Article 3, the Khalifa is empowered to adopt divine rules. So this article is basically saying the Khalifa has the right to adopt laws for the state. So when the Khalifa, in order to organize matters of the state, if the Khalifa chooses for one specific opinion, if there's difference of opinion, and he chooses one specific opinion, everyone must obey that opinion as if it is coming from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is required. Every citizen must openly and secretly obey that adopted rule. Article 4, the Khalifa does not adopt divine rules pertaining to worship. So we talked about this in a previous video, where we said that the Khalifa does not adopt divine rules related to acts of ibadat, except in the connection with zakah and jihad, because zakah and jihad fall actually under ibadat, even though they look like mu'amalat, transactions and human interactions. So in addition to what is necessary for maintaining unity of Muslims. So the Khalifa should not adopt on how to pray salah or things related to the issues of difference of opinion on for example, the Aqidah. So he should not adopt and say Allah is above the throne and everyone has to follow that opinion, because that can cause internal strife, internal problems. Because if he were to demand that I follow the opinion that Allah has a literal hand and I have to adopt that opinion, I'm going to fight back against the Khalifa. I'm going to speak out and I'm going to say this is unacceptable and you should not adopt on this, and I will never accept this opinion. I will never adopt this opinion. And suddenly now the Khalifa has the right to adopt, and I now am forced to fight against the Khalifa's opinion because I will not accept this opinion. So these are the problems that can occur. So the Khalifa should only adopt on matters that bring about unity and are necessary to bring about unity and manage the state, instead of adopting on things that people can research themselves and determine on their own. All citizens of the Islamic State are entitled to enjoy divine rights, and they are bound by the divine. This is Article 5. So they have the rights and duties. So if you look at Canada, they have the Bill of Rights. The reality is, they always talk about the Bill of Rights, your freedoms. What about the Bill of Responsibilities? Why does the West not tell people that these are your rights and these are your responsibilities? right? This is the charter of responsibilities. They don't. They just talk about, oh, you're right. It's all about you, and it's all about your freedom. It's all about you doing whatever you want and whatever. It's all not only hypocritical because it's contradictory, but it breeds this arrogant, self-centered individualism that's all about me and my right and my demands and my opinion. And you can see this right now, the cesspool of idiocy that is the West right now, in terms of everyone, having their own opinion and their right to choose their gender and their right to act like absolute complete clowns. Article 6, all citizens of the state shall be treated equally, regardless of religion, race, color, or any other matter. So under the Khilafah, all Muslims and non-Muslims are treated equally under the law. The state is forbidden to discriminate among the citizens in all matters, be it ruling, judicial, or caring of affairs. The state, now, so the details of this in terms of where there are some differences between Muslims and non-Muslims is here. The Ahkam Shari'iyya, all the ahkam of Allah Azza wa Jal are applied on the on society because these are societal laws. Just like here in the West, or in any country, the law is applied on all people. It doesn't matter what religion, whatever, where you're from, doesn't matter. The law is the law of the land. So if you want to live here, you follow the law of the land. Non-Muslims are allowed to follow their own beliefs and have their own acts of worship. So Christians and Jews and whoever, they're allowed to have they're allowed to keep their beliefs. We're not going to force them to become Muslim, and they're allowed to have their acts of worship in private. Those who are guilty of apostasy, anybody who becomes a Muslim and leaves, they are executed according to the rule of apostasy. Some people debate, is this really an Islamic law? Is it outdated? No. It's not outdated, and yes, it is an Islamic law, and it is a correct law. There's a lot related to why this is absolutely correct. It creates a great deal of seriousness, and it protects people from leaving Islam and just basically causing a great deal of confusion and so on, because they are intentionally basically trying to draw attention to themselves and so on. But really, one of the primary things that I've noticed that's so important about this is that what it does is it teaches people to be very, very serious. Now, in the West, people can become Muslim and non-Muslim. Nobody cares. Nobody's going to come and stop you. But under the Khilafah, because it's a state law, it's not about people. No one's going to go and chase anybody for committing apostasy. But as a state, when a person publicly, it becomes known he's left Islam, this person has committed a capital offense. It's a crime in society. And what this does is it creates a seriousness about belief. In Western societies and secular societies, they don't care what you believe in. Belief doesn't even matter. You can believe in Jesus. You can believe in, worship a goat. You can worship rats, like some of these Hindus. You can worship a cow. You can worship, a spaghetti monster, or whatever else you want. They don't care as long as they have all the money and they can do whatever they want. Under the Khilafah, no. Belief is the most important thing in existence, and the state teaches people to take it very, very seriously. You want to become Muslim, you have to think about it carefully. And you become Muslim because you're convinced and because you know the truth, you know the evidences, and therefore you can't just simply throw the truth away once you know that this is the truth. The West, of course, secularism teaches you that, there's no way of knowing what's true. No, that's what they think, because it's not because they care about the truth and they can't find it in religion. It's because they don't care about the truth. All they care about is this world. Money and personal benefit and their own individual opinions and so on. That's why they don't care about religion. It's not because they've analyzed it and come to the conclusion that either God exists, he doesn't tell us what to do, or God doesn't exist. No, they don't care about any of that. They just care about this world. And so these are not people who we should be following as a guide. In matters of food and clothing, the non-Muslims are treated according to their own religion, so within the limits allowed by the Ahkam Shari'iyya. So basically, when it comes to food and clothing, non-Muslims will be treated according to what their religion allows them to do. But it has to be a religious law. They can't be like, I can, eat whatever I want, like, something forbidden, like, like cannibalism. No, you have to have like a valid opinion according to a religion that is accepted according to Islam. Marital affairs, including divorce among non-Muslims, are settled in accordance with their religions. They won't be settled according to Islamic law. But between non-Muslims and Muslims, so if there's like a Muslim man who's married to a non-Muslim woman, like a Christian, Islam is the basis for settling that dispute. All the remaining Shari'i matters and rules, such as the application of transactions, punishments, and evidences in court, the system of ruling, economics, are implemented by the state upon everyone, Muslim and non-Muslim alike. There's no difference between them, and the state treats them all equally. There's countless examples where you find where there were disputes between the Khalifa himself and, for example, a Jew. There was a Jew who had a dispute with Ali bin Abi Talib, which was the cousin of the Prophet ﷺ, and he was one of the greatest jurists and one of the most trustworthy people, and one of the greatest human beings that has ever lived. And yet he lost the case against the Jew because he didn't have enough evidence, and so the Jew won. So there's lots and lots of cases where non-Muslims have beaten Muslims, and Muslims of a very high status in government, because and even in this court case, by the way, Ali became upset with the judge because he told him to not call him the Amir al-Mu'mineen because he was the ruler. He said, "Don't call me by my name as a ruler. You call me by my name as Ali, because I'm just in court. I'm not the ruler. I'm just Ali." So there were lots of things about how Ali told the judge to deal with him as just a citizen. He's not allowed to give him favoritism. Article 8, Arabic is the language of Islam and the sole language of the state. So this is something that a lot of people, I've noticed a lot of Muslims aren't very clear on this, which is that the Khilafah, the only language of the state is Arabic. And so when people say, well, even earlier today, somebody actually commented on one of my posts, and he said that, I think it was somebody else's post, but one of my comments, and he said that, why would non-Arabs submit to Arabs? First of all, if you're not going to submit to Arabs, that means you are nationalistic and you are jahil, you are ignorant of Islam, and your aqeedah and your Islam is not very strong. A believer doesn't care about Arab or no Arab. It has to do with qualifications. One of the qualifications required for a person to rule over Muslims is they must speak Arabic. I'm not saying it's one of the conditions of being a Khalifa and so on, but the language of the state is Arabic, and so you cannot complete your duties unless you speak Arabic. How can you run a state that its language is Arabic and you have to conduct all discussions and transactions primarily in Arabic? You might be able to have some private conversations in another language, but speaking to the people and writing everything out and all documents within the state must only exclusively be in Arabic and no other language. So how can somebody do all this if they don't speak the language? You have to learn the language, and then you can rule. It doesn't mean that it has to be a blood Arab. There are evidences that indicate, and this is the opinion that I follow. There's some difference of opinion, of course, but this is the opinion that I follow, and I believe it is stronger and more correct. Being an Arab is not a tribe or a blood. Being an Arab is a language. You speak Arabic, you become an Arab. Like, I'm originally from Iraq. Iraq was Persian during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Umar al-Khattab fought 5 years to bring Iraq under the rule of Islam. And then the people spoke Arabic and became Arabs. The reason why is because Arabic is a language. Arabic is not a lineage or a blood. And so anybody who learns the Arabic language and speaks Arabic fluently, you're an Arab, and now you can rule as an Arab. You can run the state as an Arab. You can take positions as mayor and so on, and we'll talk more about that. But Arabic is the only language of the state, and all state affairs must be conducted in only the Arabic language. Article 9, Ijtihad, which is deriving laws from the text of the Quran and Sunnah, is fard kifaya. So it's an obligation but it's an obligation upon all Muslims. If some Muslims undertake it, then the rest of the Muslims are not sinful. If there's no mujtahideen in the Ummah, then all Muslims are sinful until somebody picks up this responsibility, and there has to be enough mujtahideen. It could be one, that might be enough, or we might need hundreds or thousands and so on. It's always best to have as many mujtahideen as possible. Every Muslim has the right to become a mujtahid if he's acquired the necessary conditions to perform it. It's not a spiritual status or something like this. It is a qualification, like a medical degree and so on. You learn how to do ijtihad. You learn the sciences of Sharia and the Arabic language and so on. And then now you can start looking into the evidences and deriving laws. And of course, you have to have somebody to watch you, just like any doctor would have somebody watch them, or an engineer would have somebody watch them as they graduate and so on. Article 9, Ijtihad, Article 10, there is no such thing as clergy in Islam. That's very straightforward. We've talked about that before. There's no such thing as people who are the religious people and worldly people, or the Khalifa, and then he has like the Mufti of the state, or he has a spiritual, like the Uthmanis. They had this very corrupt thing that really it kind of gave birth, or it's not gave birth, but rather made it easier for the secularists to place the seeds of secularism in the Muslim lands, which is they had this, spiritual, like clergy-like individual in the state. Like, I remember when I was in Turkey, I saw this big, huge mural of a great, Islamic warrior or leader, and right next to him was another man with a turban or whatever, looks more religious looking, like a guy, and he has his hands like this while he's riding his horse. The other guy that has a sword, the other guy is making dua. That's not how Islam is. We don't have the clergy and some guy with a sword. Rasulullah ﷺ had a sword and he made dua. Abu Bakr had a sword, he made dua. Umar had a sword and he made dua. We don't have this separation between these religious people and the worldly people, the politicians and so on. We are not secularists. Article 11, the primary function of the state is the propagation of the call of Islam. So the primary role of the Khilafah is to call people to Islam. And that's done by practically applying Islam over the people, and the world sees it. And then, of course, going to other lands and removing the government, but letting people just live their lives under the authority of and the rule of Islam. Article 12. The only evidences to be considered for the divine rules are Quran, Sunnah, Ijma' Sahaba, the consensus of the companions, and Qiyas. The Quran is of course, the Quran, the Sunnah are the ahadith, and they must be like Hasan Sahih or higher grade if you want to go to Mutawatir. The consensus of the companions, the Ijma' Sahaba, is defined as the Sahaba. Basically, what Ijma' Sahaba actually is that it's the Sahaba identifying a rule that they knew there was a hadith for, but they never narrated that hadith. Right, so they knew of a hadith, but they didn't narrate the hadith, but they all agreed on something. And the way to know it's Ijma' Sahaba is if an event happens where the Sahaba should have said something or questioned or accounted somebody, but they didn't. That means they all knew of an evidence that allowed that situation to happen. For example, Umar al-Khattab, when he was passing away, when he was dying, he said, bring me the 6 Mubashirin bil Jannah. There were 7. He chose 6. He said, bring me the 6 people who were given glad tidings of entering heaven. They're guaranteed to enter Jannah. And among those 6, he basically, it's a longer narration, but he said among those 6, if one of them must become the Khalifa. If they split down the middle, then you go with the side of Abdurrahman bin Auf. If one side disputes with the other after the decision has been made by the side of Abdurrahman bin Auf, for example, then you must kill those 3. And if 3 days have passed, 3 days or 3 nights have passed, and they haven't come to a decision, you kill all of them. Okay, now all the Sahaba agreed. This is an event that somebody should have said, have you lost your mind? But no, everyone agreed. So this is Ijma' Sahaba. There's lots of examples of this. It's not just the Sahaba agreeing to something. It's something that they should have said something about this, but they didn't say anything about it. So that's an indication that there's an evidence that proves to us that this is an obligation and so on. This is also, by the way, an evidence that we only have 3 days to appoint a Khalifa. Otherwise, everyone is sinful. And then Qiyas. Qiyas is probably the most complicated thing to do in Islam. And it's not because Qiyas is complicated, but you have to find the illah. So this is a bigger topic, and I'm not going to go deep into it. But basically, there's the illah, which is the reason why Allah Azza wa Jalla legislated this law, which can only be known by an evidence from the Quran or Sunnah. And you have to be able. And this is where the difficulty is. You have to be able to differentiate between the illah and the hikmah. The wisdom behind the law and the reason behind the law. They're 2 different things, and I've studied these topics for a long time, and it's very hard for me to see the difference between the hikmah and the illah. I still have a lot of difficulty telling the difference. They look so similar, but there's, of course, then that's why the ulama have said that determining the illah is the highest level of ijtihad. It's the most complicated and most difficult, and it's only is reserved exclusively for the best of mujtahideen, because you are now answering the question, why specifically did Allah Azza wa Jal make this law? That's the most dangerous thing you can possibly do, is to answer that question. So only the best of ulama are the ones who derive the illah, and once you know the illah, you can now connect different things, and there's lots of examples of this, and I'm not going to go into too much detail, but these are all things you can study, of course, in your own halqa, and you can read up in the books of Usul al-Fiqh. Legislation cannot be taken from any source other than these evidences. Quran, Sunnah, Ijma' Sahaba, and Qiyas. That's it. There's no Ijma' al-Ulama, there's no Ijma' al-Ummah, there's no Istihsan, there's none of these things. These are all rejected. Only these 4 are the sources exclusively of evidences for laws in the Khilafah. Article 13. Every individual is innocent until proven guilty. This is very obvious. It's a very natural thing for us to know, but the evidence of Islam identifying that this is the foundation. If Islam said in certain situations that a person is guilty until proven innocent, then we would use that as the law. But it's the Shara has told us every individual is innocent until proven guilty. No person will be punished until there's a court sentence, so it has to go to court. People aren't just punished arbitrarily like you see in those silly Aladdin movies, where Aladdin goes when he's in the beginning, he's in poverty, he grabs an apple because he's starving and he's in poverty and homeless. He steals an apple, and then they right away pull out a sword and he's about to cut his hand off. It's just absurd and insulting and obviously wrong. Torturing is absolutely forbidden, and whoever inflicts torture on anyone shall be punished. Obviously, this is something that Islam forbids. Article 14, all human actions are in origin restricted to the divine rules. The basic meaning of this is that before you're allowed to take an action, the concept that we have as Muslims, before you take an action, you must know the ruling of Allah Azza wa Jal. You can't just take an action and say, oh, I'll figure it out later, or if I don't know it's haram, I can just do it. No, you must know the hukum before you're allowed to do an action. And if you don't, then you're sinful for not looking into it. And the reason why is because if Allah Azza wa Jal has given us a law for every situation, and you know that there's a law for every situation, that means there's a law for this situation. And if you go and act on the situation and you don't know the law, that means you don't care. Now, there's certain things that are openly permissible. So there's certain topics, such as, for example, everything or object is permitted. What it means is that once you determine the action related to objects, all the objects related to that action are permitted by default. So actions are restricted by the evidences in the hukum shari, the law. But once you know the ruling, for example, eating in general is permissible. Therefore, eating everything in general is permissible. So eating, the act of eating, is something that is permissible. And obviously, it should obviously go without saying, but there are evidences that indicate that eating is generally permissible. Now, what can we eat? Is the rule we have to know what's halal before we eat it, or is everything halal unless we know it's haram? Every object is permissible. That means once I know that eating, of course, these are one of the bedihiyat, the clear and obvious things, that of course eating is by default permissible, and therefore now I can eat everything and anything I want. Drinking is permissible, openly permissible. I can drink anything and everything that I want, unless I know that it's haram. So I can't eat pork. I know it's haram. I can't drink alcohol. I know it's haram, and so on. Now, for example, the male-female relations, by default, you have to know the ruling. Therefore, you cannot do anything in the context or the topic of male-female relations unless even just talking, even just looking. Obviously, we know the ruling for looking, and obviously, most people should know the ruling for talking. But when a person wants to deal with a situation between a man and a woman, before you're allowed to do anything, you must first know the ruling. So can men work together? You need to know the ruling. The answer is yes. Can men study with a female teacher? You have to go know the ruling. It's not about yes, not about no. It's about knowing the ruling. And the ruling is yes, women and men can. So there's reasons you can for business and education and da'wah and marriage and so on. There's a number of reasons, basically for everyday life. Now we're talking about the minimum permissible. There's certain things that are better. In terms of, it's better to not have men and women in terms of medical purposes. Men should find male doctors, women should find female doctors. But in a situation of extreme urgency, the surgery needs to be made. There's only a man and he's doing surgery on a woman, or a woman, she's doing a surgery on a man. In that case, it's permissible for a male doctor and so on, for the opposite gender to do surgery, for example, in an emergency situation. But otherwise, it's better to have, it's better in terms of chastity and so on and so forth for men and women to have elements of segregation or entire segregation in terms of protecting them in society. But the main idea is, once you know the hukum, first you need to know the hukum. Once you know the hukum, everything related to that, what that action is that's permissible, you're allowed to objects related to that action are permissible. But if there's another action similar to that action, but it's a little bit different, then you have to look at it. If in some cases it's similar enough, in some cases you have to know the new hukum, because there's a new hukum that replaces the old hukum because something has changed. Article 15, any means that most likely leads to haram is itself haram. So anything in society that most likely leads to haram is itself haram. If, for example, if let's say the state were to, if let's say the ruling of Islam is that listening to music that is, let's say, topic neutral, like instrumental or something like this, and this is permissible by default, for example, if you follow that opinion. But the problem is, let's say, allowing it in society, most likely, and because we've seen from practical evidence, it almost always leads to haram. People starting to free mix and people starting to do haram things, then it becomes haram. Because just because something is halal doesn't mean that it doesn't lead to haram. If it leads to haram, then it becomes haram as if it was originally haram. However, if it was only feared, there's just a concern, like maybe could it lead to a problem, then it is not haram. Only if it most likely will lead to haram. The topic of the ruling system. Article 16, the ruling system of the state is that of a unitary ruling system and not a federation. There's a bunch of ignorant Muslims who go out and say that the state The Khilafah can be a federation, or you can have, for example, like the European Union or the United States of America, where we have states that are sort of semi-independent and so on. This is somebody who's completely and totally ignorant of the Islamic ruling system. There's no evidence to allow this. There's lots of evidence to completely forbid it. So it's absolutely forbidden for there to be a federation type of system. It's a unitary state with one single Khalifa at all times, and this was agreed upon by all scholars. And the only exception that came about from some scholars was those who said that in the situation of where the Khalifa, because remember back in the time of camels and horses and donkeys, and there's no other means of transportation, the Khalifa sometimes was a 2 to 3 month trip away from the like Spain, for example, Andalusia, when Islam ruled over Spain. And so a person from Spain would have to travel a month and a half to 2 months minimum, like that's at good speed, just to get to the Khalifa to get one message, and then go back and bring that message. So they said, okay, then some scholars said, and this is a rejected and wrong opinion, but it's a very fringe opinion, but some scholars said you can have a separate khilafah. This is, of course, silly. You can have we're going to talk about this, but you can have a mu'awana tafwid, which is an assistant that is delegated the responsibilities of the Khalifa to manage an area, that because the Khalifa can't focus on this. But either way, the point is, the Khilafah is a unitary ruling system. One Khalifa rules the entire state, and all Muslims fall under a single Khalifa. Article 17, ruling is centralized and administration is decentralized. So the position of ruling is the Khalifa, and it all goes back to him. Whereas administration, every different area will have their own administration, and people will go to those administration regions and to solve their problems. Not everyone has to go back to the Khalifa. Article 18, there are 4 positions of ruling in the state. They are the Khalifa, the delegated assistants, Mu'awana Tafwid, the governor, the wali, and the provincial mayor, the amil. So these are the 4. The Khalifa, the Mu'awana Tafwid, the wali, and the amil. The Khalifa is the single ruler of the entire state. The Mu'awana Tafwid are assistants who basically play the role of Khalifa in regions. They're regional sort of mini khulafa, if you want to call it that. They act like the Khalifa. They have because Tafwid means you've delegated the responsibilities of the Khalifa to that person. So you send him to a region, and people will go back to him. They won't go back to the Khalifa, and he's accountable to the Khalifa. So the Khalifa checks in, makes sure that everything is good. But he's acting basically as like an acting Khalifa in an area, but he's not independent. He's completely under the opinions and the rule of the Khalifa, but he manages things and makes decisions on a day-to-day basis without having to always go back to the Khalifa. If there's an issue where he is unsure of the adoption of the Khalifa, he has to go back to the Khalifa. And so that's the Mu'awana Tafwid. And then there's the Wali, which is the rulers over the provinces. So they're the provincial, like in a parliamentary system, you would say like the premier or the governor and so on. So these are like governors in the United States. So these are individuals who are responsible for the provinces. And so the Mu'awana Tafwid will be responsible for a group of provinces, an entire region, an entire continent, half the world it could be. If the Khilafah rules the whole world, he could be in charge of literally the whole southern hemisphere. You can have a Mu'awana Tafwid for the southern hemisphere. But the governors are different provinces, the Wulat. And Wulat is plural for Wali. And then the provincial mayor, so you have the mayors in different areas. So even though here it's translated as provincial mayor, but the amil, I think actually more accurately is more of a local, like it's a city-based. It's a person who's in charge of a city. Whereas the governor is in charge of a province, the Mu'awana Tafwid is in charge of a region, and the Khalifa is in charge of everybody all those people under him. Article 19, no one is permitted to take charge. And by the way, so these are the only ruling positions. Everything else are employees. Everyone else in the state, they're all employees of the state. There are only 4 positions of ruling, which are these ones that I mentioned. Article 19, no one is permitted to take charge of ruling or any action considered to be of the nature of ruling except a male who is free, not a slave, mature, sane, trustworthy, competent, and he must be a Muslim. So these conditions are the conditions, basically the conditions of the Khalifa. So any position of ruling, it must be. So the Prophet ﷺ forbade a woman from ruling over Muslims. He forbade slaves from ruling over Muslims. He forbade children. They're not balighs, or they're not. What's a good translation? They are not accountable in front of Allah Azza wa Jal. They're not of the mental level to be accountable. But once you reach puberty, you're now accountable, and a person who's of the age of puberty. So when we talk about mature or of age, that's of age of puberty, not 18 or 17 or some random number that the kuffar have picked. For us, being baligh is the age of puberty, because that's when a person becomes an adult and they become accountable in front of Allah Azza wa Jal. So anyone over the age of puberty can become a khalifa. It doesn't mean that we'll pick a 12 or 13-year-old, but we can if they are the best of us. And sometimes we may get somebody who's truly exceptional, and it's happened in the past where there have been 16-year-old khulafa. Sane, you can't, because the Prophet ﷺ forbade us from having an insane person making decisions for us, obviously. They must be trustworthy. In terms of them being trustworthy, a better translation for adl is a person who does not commit open sin. That's the meaning of this. So we don't know, like everyone makes mistakes, everyone commits sins. The Rasulullah said, كل بني آدم خطاء وخير الخطائين التوابون. Every son of Adam commits sins. Every son of Adam makes mistakes. We're talking about small sins. And the best of those who commit sins are the ones who repent. And so this one is saying that the Khalifa, if you can't say he must be absolutely sinless, because then nobody would qualify. Rather, if he does not commit open sin. That's what adl means. He's just. And including in that is his decision making. If this person who's unjust in their decision making, they're not a person who implements ahkam shar'iyya or implements ahkam shar'iyya in a biased manner. These are all sins. These are all things that are not allowed. And so that also falls under. But it also falls under things like such as the person lies, the person has haram relations with the opposite gender, or they committed haram in business, or whatever it might be, then they're also not adl. So adl is a person who does not commit open sin, or is not known for committing sins. Nothing of their sins have become public. And so this is a person who, as far as we can tell, is a good Muslim. Competent. So the person must be competent, capable of undertaking the responsibilities. And of course, he must, because the role is to manage the whole state. You can't have somebody who's incompetent managing the affairs of the Muslims. And he must only be a Muslim. It's a requirement. Allah Azza wa says, وَلَنْ يَجْعَلَ اللَّهُ لِلْكَافِرِينَ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ سَبِيلًا. Allah does not allow for the disbelievers to have authority over the believers. Article 20. Calling upon the rulers to account for their actions is both a right and a fard kifaya. So it's an obligation for some minimum. It's an obligation upon Muslims to account the ruler. But if some Muslims undertake that obligation, then the rest are not responsible. So it's a right, though, for everybody. The Khalifa does something wrong, everybody has the right to account the Khalifa, and nobody is to be persecuted for accounting the Khalifa and questioning him and so on. But it's, of course, at minimum, there must be a group of Muslims who are accounting the Khalifa on behalf of the Ummah if something goes wrong. Non-Muslim subjects have the right to make known their grievances regarding the rulers, injustice, and misapplication of Islamic rules upon them. So again, even they, if the Khalifa is being unjust to them, they have the right to speak out and to make their voices heard through some. We'll talk about a little more about Majlis al-Shura, the Ummah Council. Article 21. Muslims are entitled to establish political parties to question the rulers. Now, political parties, we're not talking about like in the kuffar, in the kafir system, the colonial system, the democratic system, or parliamentary system, or whatever. For there to be political parties, as in a party that is going to rule. That's not what a political party is in Islam. In Islam, our political parties are organizations that are dedicated to politics. It doesn't mean that they're trying to rule. No, there's only one Khalifa. Political parties in Islam are Muslims who work together in order to account the ruler and to make sure that the society, the matters of politics in society are managed well. So these political parties are to question the rulers and to access the position of ruling through the Ummah on condition that the parties are based on the Aqeedah of Islam and their adopted rules are Ahkam Shar'iyya. The establishment of such a party does not require a license by the state. Any party not established on the basis of Islam is prohibited. And so this political party can also be involved in selecting the Khalifa or advising the Ummah on who to select, and so on. The ruling system is founded upon Article 22. The ruling system is founded upon four principles. They are: sovereignty belongs to the Shara' and not to the people. So we talked about this in previous videos, which is the sovereignty. It means the right to legislate. So in England, for example, sovereignty belongs to the king or the queen. They are the sovereign legislators in the Khalifa or advising the Ummah on who to select, and so on. The ruling system is founded upon Article 22. The ruling system is founded upon four principles. It's people who legislate. But in a monarchy, sovereignty belongs to the king or queen. That's why in Saudi Arabia, if the king, so-called king, says something, he makes a law, that's it. It's not about halal, haram. It's not about Quran and Sunnah. He said so, and that's it. He has the right to legislate because he's the sovereign legislator. which is really kufr, by the way. But Allah Azza wa Jal will judge them. We're not going to make accusations, but Allah Azza wa Jal will decide whether status is on Yawm al-Qiyamah. But the idea of sovereignty means who's the legislator in the system. Authority is who gets to pick the ruler, not who gets to pick the laws, who gets to pick the ruler. So sovereignty is who picks the laws. So sovereignty in Islam is only Allah Azza wa Jal, so the Quran and Sunnah. Authority in Islam is the people. So the Ummah has the right to choose the ruler, but the people and the Khalifa only have the right to refer to the Quran and Sunnah for laws. They're not allowed to make up their own laws. So so the first principle is sovereignty belongs to the Quran and Sunnah, or the Shara', which is the laws of Allah Azza wa Jal. Authority belongs to the people, so the Ummah has the right to choose their ruler. There's no such thing as imama, where they're chosen by God, or some divine right, or like some divine blood, or any of this kind of these silly ideas or these very weak opinions. The people elect their ruler just like they did with Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman and Ali and all the Khulafa after them. Now, of course, we talked about this before in chapter 3, which is that there was misapplication of the Ummah electing, which was that after Muawiyah, from Yazid onwards, the people were told this is going to be your next Khalifa, and people ended up accepting it. So, but the authority still was with the people. The people said, no, this person wouldn't have become a Khalifa. But it just became, tradition or whatever it might be for it to go to whoever the Khalifa chose, usually a family member. And of course, this was wrong. This was a corruption of the process of the bay'ah, but it wasn't a misapplication because the authority was still with the people. Number 3, the appointment of one Khalifa into office is an obligation upon all Muslims, so there must be one Khalifa at all times, and only the Khalifa has the right to adopt ahkam shari'iyya, which is, we talked about this in a previous article. Article 23, the state systems are made up of 13 institutions. They are so the whole state is made up of these 13 pieces. The Khalifa, the delegated assistant, so this is the Mu'awan al-Tafwid, we talked about this a little bit earlier. He's the one who plays the role of the Khalifa. The executing assistants, we're going to go into some more detail about this, but I'm just going to quickly summarize. The Mu'awan al-Tanfid, this is the executing assistant. It means that the Khalifa will give them a task or a set of tasks, a list of things to do, and they go and execute those orders. That's it. They don't have the right to work outside of these parameters. He says, go to this land and solve this problem according to these instructions, talk to these people, use this money to build X, Y, and Z, and once you're done, return, for example. This is an executing assistant. He doesn't have the right to make decisions, or people can come to him about other topics, whereas the delegated assistant, the Mu'awan al-Tafwid, he has the right to go to an area and to make decisions, and he's sort of like, he's not independent of the Khalifa, but he is, it would look independent. It's semi-independent, if you want to call it that. He has the ability to act as if he's the Khalifa, but he's totally bound by the Khalifa because he's under the Khalifa. He's in the position of ruling, but as a delegated assistant. The governors, which is the provinces, the Emir of Jihad, which is the leader, the head of all the armies in the state, and as including industrial manufacturing and so on, that all falls under Emir al-Jihad. The Homeland Security, or the Interior Security, Foreign Affairs. So these are all different institutions within the state. There's a Department of Homeland Security, the Department of the Emir al-Jihad, the Department of Foreign Affairs, the Department of Industry, which is manufacturing and so on. It's interesting how Islam orders us to organize manufacturing and industry. Number 9 is the judiciary, which is the courts and so on. Number 10 is the state departments, which are the department, you might have the Department of Education, the Department of Utilities and so on. The state treasury, which is basically the state, all the money that the state controls and is able to distribute. Media, which is controlling, media in society, obviously, i'lam. And the Council of the Ummah, which is the Shura Council, and the accounting of the rulers in the state. Now, the position of the Khalifa. The Khalifa represents the Ummah in authority and in implementing the Shara. So the Khalifa is the representative, the sole single representative over all Muslims. He represents all of them, and he implements Islam over them. Number 25, the Khilafah is a contract of nomination and acceptance. So the people nominate, and then he accepts. No one is forced to accept, and no one is obligated to nominate any one particular person for it. Anybody who doesn't want to become a Khalifa, he doesn't have to accept. Every mature male and female Muslim who is sane has the right to participate in the election of the Khalifa and in giving him the Pledge of Allegiance. Men and women all have the right to elect since the time of Rasulullah ﷺ onward. The women gave bay'ah and so on and so forth. So the non-Muslims have no right in this regard, because you're choosing who's going to rule with Islam. The kuffar have no say in who gets to rule with Islam or how Islam is ruled, obviously, because not only they don't understand the systems of Islam, they are a threat to the system. They might elect the worst person possible, right? They don't want to see, Islam succeed, or a lot of them don't want to see Islam succeed. They will have absolutely no role whatsoever in choosing the Khalifa. But every male and female Muslim who's of age, sane, has the right to participate in the election of the Khalifa. And this is since the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, you look at the West, it was the 1900s when women finally were treated as human beings enough to be able to, and they had to fight just to get the right to vote. For us, Allah gave them the right since the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Once the contract of the Khalifa has been concluded on a person through the bay'ah, of those whom the bay'ah is legitimately concluded. So there's a group called Ahl al-Hal wal-Aqd. They're the people that the Ummah trusts the most. And so they're the ones generally who are going to be nominating and electing the Khalifa on behalf of the people, because people trust them. If they're not the representatives, they're not just some like overpowering group of controlling people or wealthy or something like this. No, they're people who the Ummah actually really trusts. And so not everyone's going to be involved in electing the Khalifa, because that's just too big a task. They trust these people to elect the Khalifa. And so once they give bay'ah to the Khalifa they've chosen and so on, they've gone through the conditions and so on, then the Ummah gives the bay'ah of obedience. This group, Al-Hal wal-Aqd, will give the Khalifa the bay'ah of contracting. So now he's contracted now to be the ruler. And then the rest of the Ummah gives bay'ah of obedience. So those who might disobey or rebel are obliged to give the bay'ah. So everyone has to give. So any group that is considered to be possibly a threat, or they might disobey or rebel, they must give the bay'ah in person. Otherwise, everyone can simply obey, and then that's their bay'ah. Article 28, nobody can become Khalifa without being appointed by the Muslims. Nobody can hold the power of the Khalifa unless it's convened to him legitimately, as is the case with any contract in Islam. Article 29, any country that wishes to give the Khalifa the bay'ah of contracting, their sultan authority must be self-acting, and it must be a Muslim authority only, and not a kafir state. So they must be under the control and they must be under the authority and control and security of Muslims. If they want to give bay'ah to the Khalifa and join the Khilafah, they have the right to. The security of Muslims in that country, both internally and externally, must be maintained by the security of Islam and not kufr. You can't have a kufr state coming and giving bay'ah, because of course then they could become a threat. It has to be under the authority of Islam. Now a kafir state can come and say, we want to become Muslim, and let's say there's a bunch of non-Muslims in the army, then they're all expelled, and the Khilafah's army will go and take over the military, and the laws of the land will be changed into Islam, and then at this point in time, this land now can give bay'ah to the Khalifa and so on. As for the bay'ah of obedience, so this is the bay'ah of contracting. So the bay'ah of obedience, it can be taken from any other country without such conditions. Article 30, the individual who is given the bay'ah for the Khilafah need only to fulfill the contracting conditions, even if he did not fulfill the preference conditions, because what is essential is the conditions of contracting. So there are 7 conditions of contracting for the Khalifa. Number 1 is they have to be male, Muslim, free, mature, sane, trustworthy, and capable. Okay, so we talked about this earlier. He has to be a male. Being a female is forbidden for a female to rule over Muslims. It's forbidden for non-Muslims to rule over Muslims. It's forbidden for slaves to rule over Muslims. It's forbidden for children to rule over Muslims. It's forbidden for insane people to rule over Muslims. It's forbidden for an open fasiq, a person who commits open sin, to rule over Muslims. And it's not possible, really, and it's wrong, and of course not allowed, for somebody who is incapable, who doesn't know what to do, or he's in control, somebody else controls them, or they're lacking something to fulfill their responsibilities, because the duty must be fulfilled. It's an obligation for us to have a Khalifa who fulfills all the duties, so they must be capable. Article 32. If the post of the Khalifa becomes vacant due to death, resignation, or dismissal, the appointment of a new Khalifa must take place within 3 days. I talked about this with the example of Umar. That's actually the primary evidence, which includes the nights from the date when it became vacant. So it's 3 days and 3 nights, but better worded, it's 3 nights and 3 days. Our days as Muslims starts with the night from Maghrib. That's the beginning of our day. So it's the first Maghrib day from the first, so that first Maghrib is the first day, and then you have the daytime is the day of that first day, and then the second Maghrib is the second day, and so on. So you have 3 nights and 3 days. Article 33, a temporary Amir is appointed to run the affairs of the Muslims and to supervise the measures of appointing a new Khalifa after the post of Khalifa became vacant in the following process. And it talks about how a person becomes how the temporary emir is put in power and their rights and responsibilities. I'm not going to go through that. The method of appointing the Khalifa through the bay'ah the method of appointing the Khalifa is through the bay'ah. The measures for appointing and giving bay'ah to the Khalifa are as follows. And again, we talk about who, like Mahkamat al-Madhalim, which is the court of injustices, will announce that the Khalifa is no longer in power anymore for whatever reason, and now it's vacant. And then there's a process for now electing the Khalifa, and you can read through this on your own to figure out the process. There's also another book called Institutions of the Khilafah State that talks about the details of how the Khalifa is nominated and then elected and so on. Article 35: the Ummah has the authority to appoint the Khalifa, but the Ummah has no right to dismiss him after he has legitimately attained the bay'ah of contracting. So if he's a legitimate Khalifa and he reached power legitimately, well, the Ummah has the right to put him in power. They don't have the right to remove him from power. It's not like any of the other garbage systems of the world, whether it's the democratic ones or the corrupt ones like Russia, where a person stays in power forever. It's nothing like any of those things. It's a completely separate system that's based on the guidance of Islam. If the Khalifa does implements other than Islam, he can be removed. If the Khalifa shows, for example, treachery or kufr, he can be removed. He must be removed, and so on. So it's not that he's an eternal ruler, and it's not that he's there for 4 years or 8 years or something like this, like these arbitrary numbers. The Khalifa is given bay'ah. He's the one that we chose, and he stays in power unless he dies or something happens, or he breaks one of the conditions of his contracting, which is implementing Islam and so on. Article 36: the Khalifa possesses the following powers. So first of all, he has the right to adopt ahkam shari'ah. The second one is he's responsible for both internal and external policies of the state. The third one is that the Khalifa has the authority to accept and reject foreign ambassadors and so on. The fifth is he appoints and dismisses the mu'awinin however he wills. The same for the governors. And so the mu'awinin and the governors are appointed by the Khalifa. So the wulat of the provinces and the mu'awinin, whether it's the tafwid or the tanfid, they are all appointed by the Khalifa. The Khalifa appoints and dismisses the chief judge. So the Qadi al-Qudat, the head of all judges, is appointed by the Khalifa, and then from there the judges are chosen by the chief judge. The Khalifa also appoints and dismisses the directors of departments. The Khalifa chooses them because all these people are accountable to the Khalifa because they are taking on one of his responsibilities. The people don't have the right to elect anyone that they want. Again, it's not a democracy. It's a system where the laws are bound by the guidance of Allah Azza wa Jal, and Allah Azza wa Jal has identified to us that the best way to organize society is that the position of a Khalifa is elected, but the majority of other positions are appointed because these people are representing the Khalifa in their duties. They're not representing the people. So that's what's important here. The Khalifa is representing the people. The Khalifa is the person who the people have chosen. But everybody else from after the Khalifa takes power he's choosing people to take care of responsibilities that he's supposed to do. But he can't be everywhere. He can't do everything. So he's going to appoint people to do his responsibilities. So now they're accountable to him. So he's the one who gets to choose because the Ummah trusted the judgment of the Khalifa when they elected him, and now the Khalifa is going to now make judgments on who he chooses for these different positions. So he appoints the directors of the departments, the heads of the armed forces, and the generals, and they're all responsible to the Khalifa and not to the Majlis al-Ummah, to the Shura Council or to the people. Some people have ignorantly said that Majlis al-Ummah or the Shura Council is like democracy. These are people who are brainwashed or fooled or ignorant. They don't understand. They've been brainwashed by democracy. Democracy is a system where yes, people they make laws and they can do whatever they want. Majlis al-Ummah is a group or a council that simply has the ability to voice their concerns to the Khalifa, and the Khalifa can go to them when he needs advice on how something should be done. Not what law to apply, but once the law is known from Islam, then okay, well, how do we apply this? Like, how do we, like, let's say, again, you want to talk about something simple like traffic laws. The Khalifa might go to the Majlis al-Ummah and say, we need to determine how to best organize speed limits. Should we put it at 140 or 130 on highways or 150? Should we have unlimited speed limits? And so the Majlis al-Ummah might say X, Y, and Z, or he might go to experts. On the Majlis al-Ummah, you might have experts, and so on. So this is the Majlis al-Ummah is simply an advisory council that advises the Khalifa to voice the people. There can be non-Muslims in the Majlis al-Ummah to voice the opinions of the non-Muslims in the state, but the Khalifa doesn't have to take the opinions that they voice. In certain cases, he has to, where he goes to them on certain issues. But otherwise, it's just the Ummah's right to voice their concerns to the Khalifa, and the Khalifa has the right to go to them if he needs advice. And the Khalifa adopts the ahkam shar'iyya by which the state's budget is set. The Khalifa decides its sections and the funds required for every field, whether they are related to revenue or expenditure. Article 37, the Khalifa is restricted in his own adoption. Okay, so the Khalifa only has the right to, once he adopts a hukum, he's bound by his own adoption. He can't contradict his own adoption. So if he says something is forbidden, he can't do it. And so this, of course, this should be obvious. But what's interesting is that a lot of people break their own rules. Like one thing, here's this really small example of something that I saw. There was a board, the head of the board at a masjid that I knew of. They have the parking lot behind the masjid. It's a really big parking lot. The entrance is from the east side, and it goes around back, and it comes out the west side. And one time I saw this person going. Now they always make a really big fuss about people going in backwards from the exit because the entrance is closed because the place is full. So I once saw him just going backwards through the exit, and he was trying to find a parking space. So things like this, I remember I thought to myself, like how nice is it that you're following the example of the rulers today instead of following the example of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the guidance of Islam that requires you to follow your own rules. So if you're going to adopt a rule, like having the exit on this side or the entrance on that side is not required by Islam. But once you adopt rules, you have to follow your own rules. Now you can't just be like, I'm just going to do whatever I want. You might say, all these rules are in place, but I'm allowed to break them to go and inspect or to go and check, or the caretaker can go through for whatever purpose. Fine. But if you say that no one's allowed to do it, you can't be like, well, I can just do whatever I want. I'm the boss. No, you can't break your own rules. So once the Khalifa adopts something for the state, he's bound by it just like everybody else. And so he has to follow it. And if he doesn't, then he's sinful, and the people have the right to account him, and so on. Article 38, the Khalifa has the absolute right to conduct the citizens of the affairs according to his ijtihad. So he has the right to adopt of the mubah. So the point here is the Khalifa has unrestricted right to adopt anything as long as it comes from the evidences of Islam. His own ijtihad. If he has his own ijtihad and it's a valid ijtihad, but the people don't like it, it doesn't matter. He has the right to ijtihad. If he's qualified to do ijtihad, then he has the right to adopt his own opinions. People don't have the right to say, well, I don't really like your opinions, I follow a different school of thought. No, he is required to he's required to sorry, hold on a second. So he has the right to do his own ijtihad and apply it. The one thing that kind of drew my attention was that, however, he's not allowed to disagree with the hukm shar'i under the name of interest. For example, he cannot prevent a family from having more than one child under the pretext of a shortage in food. So he can't just adopt anything he wants because of some benefit. He has to have a shar'i ijtihad to allow him to make these kinds of restrictions. Nor can he fix prices on the pretext of preventing exploitation, or appoint a kafir or a woman as a wali under the pretext of caring for the affairs of the or the interest, or anything that disagrees with the sharia or interest like riba, or anything that disagrees with the sharia rules. The Khalifa must not forbid any halal thing or allow any haram thing. Article 39. There is no limitation of the Khalifa's period in office. We talked about that. He stays for as long as he's alive, or unless he breaks one of the conditions of, as long as he's alive, or he's free, like he might be taken hostage or something by a kafir state, or he might rule by other than Islam, and so on. Article 40, there are three matters by which the situation of the Khalifa changes, in which he is discharged from the position. One, if the qualifying conditions become void, such as he's no longer a Muslim, he commits open haram, things like this, then he's removed from power. If he's unable to undertake the position of rule anymore, for whatever reason, he's removed from power. And if he is subdued, he's taken hostage or something like this, or if he's being controlled by somebody, then he's removed from office. Article 41, and this includes, by the way, we talked about this here, when one or more of the Khalifa's entourage exerts control over the management of the affairs. So if we find anybody, they have an influence over the Khalifa and they're kind of guiding him and controlling, he's removed from office. He's no longer independent, he's no longer capable. This person must be. So now, of course, if this person can be removed, his influence can be removed, then he's given some time to remove that influence. If he doesn't remove it, then he's removed from power. And if we think that he'll never remove this, like if Ahl al-Hal wal-Aqd or Mahkamat al-Madhalim and so on agree that this person will never break free from this person, the Khalifa will never break free from this influence, then the Khalifa is dismissed from his position. And then we talked about, should the Khalifa be captured by an enemy? Then again, there's a certain procedure in terms of determining how long we have until we can get him back. But if it's we're never going to get him back, we immediately appoint a new Khalifa. Article 41, the responsibility of deciding whether or not the Khalifa's situation has altered in such a way as to warrant a dismissal is a prerogative of the Court of Acts of Injustice, which is Mahkamat al-Madhalim. They're the ones who actually make this decision and implement it. They're the only ones who have the right to dismiss the Khalifa. The second position, which is the delegated assistant, I talked a little bit about that. But Article 42 is the Khalifa appoints the assistant or more delegated with the authority. And so I explained this point, which is that he's delegated with basically the role of the Khalifa, basically, but he's under complete control of the Khalifa. Article 43 is a Mu'awan al-Tafweed must be qualified with the same qualifications as the Khalifa. He must be Muslim, he must be sane, he made all the same conditions. The Mu'awan al-Tafweed, because he is basically the Khalifa, he's just taking on some role in a particular region to act as the Khalifa, in order so the Khalifa can focus on other things. Article 44, the appointment of the Mu'awan al-Tafweed must entail both deputation and a general responsibility. So there's a general responsibility over an area, but also a specific set of things to do. You don't just go and send him and be like, do whatever. He has to have a certain restricted set of things to do. Article 45, the function of the delegated assistant, so as to distinguish between him and the Khalifa and his authority, is to inform the Khalifa of the matters he has managed and the appointments of delegated duties he has implemented. So you don't just send him and don't have him come back and report. No, he must report about everything that he's doing, and that's what maintains that he's under the Khalifa. He doesn't just go and stay there for 20 years and he's ruling as if he's independent. No, he's constantly being accounted by the Khalifa, and he's constantly reporting everything back and letting him know what he did, and the Khalifa is going to go through everything and determine whether or not it's being done properly. Article 46, the Khalifa has to examine the actions, and as I mentioned, he must examine. That's the point. He must examine what the Mu'awan al-Tafweed is doing. He can't just let him do whatever he wants. Article 47, once the Mu'awan al-Tafweed has managed a matter with agreement, so when the Mu'awan al-Tafweed manages something that is in agreement with the Khalifa's instructions, the Khalifa does not have the right to go and reverse it. And there's some exceptions to this. But the point is, the Mu'awan al-Tafweed, his decisions should be respected by the Khalifa, because the Khalifa delegated him. So just like if the Khalifa, basically in issues where the Khalifa himself, had he implemented something, he wouldn't reverse it. He can't just go and reverse the opinions of the Mu'awan. But if the Mu'awan al-Tafweed goes and does something wrong, and it contradicts the adoption of the Khalifa, or there's some clear reason that this is contradicting the general guidelines of what the Khalifa has given him, then the Khalifa has the right to reverse that and correct it. Article 48. The Mu'awan al-Tafweed is not specified to any department of the administration system. Rather, his supervision of such departments is general, because those who run such departments are employees and not rulers. And the Mu'awan is a ruler. So the Mu'awan al-Tafweed. So he's not assigned to a particular department. His work is general, because if there's a specific department or a specific number of tasks, that's Mu'awan al-Tanfidh. So the Mu'awan al-Tafweed is a person who's just given general responsibilities with a specific set of tasks included. The next one is the Mu'awan al-Tanfidh. That's the third one. So Article 49, the Khalifa appoints the Mu'awan al-Tanfidh, whose function is administrative and not ruling. So this is not a ruler, even though it sounds like Mu'awan, because we talk about the rulers. There's only 4 rulers: the Khalifa, the Mu'awan al-Tafweed, and then the Wali and the judge. But the Amil, sorry. But the Mu'awan al-Tanfidh, which looked like it would be a 5th, he's not a ruler, because he's given a specific set of instructions and a set number of things to do and a set number of ways to do it. And so the Mu'awan al-Tafweed is given a specific administrative role in getting things done. He takes care of the relations with citizens, international relations, matters of managing or dealing with armies and soldiers, and state institutions other than the army. Article 50, the Mu'awan al-Tanfidh must be a Muslim, because he is one of the Khalifa's entourage. Article 51, the Mu'awan al-Tanfidh is always in direct contact with the Khalifa, the same way as Mu'awan al-Tafweed is. But the Mu'awan al-Tanfidh is an assistant. Okay, he's not in a position of ruling. The fourth, which is the governors of the provinces, which are the Wula. The territories governed by the state are divided into units called provinces. Each wilaya is divided into units called districts, imalat. So the districts are managed, like remember I mentioned earlier, basically cities or districts. That's the amil. They're called imalat. And then from those districts, the larger one is the province, which is the wilaya. And then from there you have the region, and then you have the state. So the state is the khalifa, the region is the mu'awanat al-tafwid. And then you have the wilaya, which is the province, and then you have the imala, which is the district or the city. The person who governs the wilaya is called the wali, the wali or the amir, and the person who governs the imala is called an amil. Article 53: the wali and the amil, the walat and the amal, if you want to use the Arabic words, are appointed by the khalifa. The wali can also appoint the amils as well, because the amils are under his authority, so the khalifa can delegate that responsibility to the wali, because the wali is also a ruler. And they must be selected from good Muslims, not just anybody. So it has to be people who are known for their taqwa and so on, and the same conditions are required of all of them, because they're all positions of ruling: Muslim, male, free, mature, sane, adl, which is that they don't commit open sin, and competent. Article 54: the wali has the authority to govern and supervise the performance of the departments in his province, or on behalf of the khalifa. So again, the wali has the authority to govern the departments under him in his province. Article 55: the wali is not obligated to inform the khalifa of what he has carried out within his authorized command, but if a new problem arises, he has to wait until he has informed the khalifa about it. So the wali is not like the mu'awan al-tafwid. The wali is in charge of his province. He doesn't have to continuously report back to the khalifa. Whereas the mu'awan al-tafwid, he needs to constantly report back to the khalifa, because he's taking on a role of doing things as if he's the khalifa. Whereas the wali is in charge of the province. He's been assigned, he's been appointed. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out, there's an article where we talk about that the people have the right, if the people are not happy with their wali, the khalifa should remove him from power and put someone else, because the people should be happy with their local ruler, the amir, the wali, and so on. Every province has an assembly elected from its people. So every province has an assembly of people that speak on behalf of the people, because remember, the khilafah cares about the people. The khalifa is representing the people. We all want to please Allah Azza wa Jal, and everybody is to be cared for. So it's not like the other states where people can just do whatever they want and everyone feels like they're disconnected from management of the state. No, everyone has a role, because this is our society. This belongs to everybody, including non-Muslims also have the right to express their views. So their role is to provide the necessary information about the situation of the province and how things are going with the governor and so on. They have the right to speak about their pleasure or discontent with the way the wali is governing them. And the opinion of the assembly regarding the first subject, which is the needs and so on, is not binding, while the second one is binding. So if they complained of the wali, he would be dismissed. So if the assembly, which are the representative of the people, say that this wali is a bad wali, the khalifa dismisses him and puts someone else in his place. Now this wali can go to a different province, or he can just simply be dismissed and given a different role. The wali's term of office, unless he's done something clearly wrong, like haram, he's broken some rules, then it's different. Then he obviously would be just simply expelled from rule. But if he's a very good ruler, but the people just don't like him, then he's removed and somebody else is put in his place, because the wali should be somebody that the people want. Article 57: the wali's term of office in a particular province is not to be long. He must be discharged whenever he becomes powerful in his province, or the people become enchanted with him. This is a very important concept in Islam. We prevent society from being led by personalities, with the exception of a khalifa. The khalifa is the only position where that can happen, and it's fine. But everywhere else, if there's ever anybody who's in a position where they are, especially the wali, where the people start looking up to him and start loving him too much, and then it's not a matter of expelling him. It's just a matter of, you can put him somewhere else. But you can't allow anyone to become a personality leader, where people like Muawiyah. That's one of the reasons why this is in place. You look at the corruption that happened because Muawiyah was charismatic and he gained the love and support of people. People stopped even obeying the Khalifa. They started feeling resentment towards the Khalifa because Muawiyah would he created an environment that they would look at him as being the best. And that's how human beings are. They only knew Muawiyah. They didn't know anybody else. They didn't know the history of Rasulullah ﷺ and the Sahaba and the struggles that they went through and so on. They just knew Muawiyah, who brought Islam to them and showed them everything, and they all loved him. And it caused a massive fitna because of that. So the Khilafah should not allow, so the wali should be only a wali for a relatively small period of time, a few years, and then it should be switched out for another wali and they can be moved around. And but I remember there was a small. Here it is actually. Yeah. So the wali's appointment. Sorry, I'm gonna have to correct that because I do remember there was a restriction on moving in from provinces, and I couldn't remember. But here it is. The wali's appointment is a general responsibility in a defined location. Consequently, the wali is not transferred from one province to another. He has to be discharged first and then reappointed. So it's not like saying that the wali of this, you're now transferred to this. He has to be discharged, and then a process has to be made of whether or not he's going to be put in another place. So it's a matter of process. It's not a matter of saying this wali is now moved here and then we're just moving walis around. You're discharged. You're no longer a wali, and then we'll see if we have another place to put you. So you can put him in a different province, but you can't. It's not a matter of just transporting and being like moved to that. Teleporting his responsibilities. The wali can be discharged if the Khalifa decides so, or if the Majlis al-Ummah expresses dissatisfaction with him. So the Khalifa can just say, I don't want you in power anymore. That's it. He's out. There's no reasons. The Khalifa just has the right to just choose to remove him because the Khalifa appointed him, and he's somebody who the Khalifa is accounted for on the Day of Judgment for ruling. Article 60. The Khalifa must exercise strict control over the walis or the walat and continuing to assess their performance. So the Khalifa must always check and make sure that everything is being done properly. And of course, he must periodically have a meeting with all of them and discuss the issues and figure out what's going on and what's right and what's wrong and so on, constantly making sure that everything is being done right. The next position, the next department within the state, which is the Emir of Jihad, the War Department and the Army. Article 61. The military department oversees all affairs connected with the military forces, such as the army, the police, like equipment for the military and police, tasks, armament supplies, etc. It also includes control of military academies, military missions, and everything deemed necessary for the Islamic culture and the culture of the army, and whatever is related to warfare and its preparation. The head of the department is called Amir al-Jihad. Article 62. Jihad is a compulsory duty fard on all Muslims. Military training is therefore compulsory. Thus, every male Muslim 15 years of age and over is obliged to undergo military training in readiness for jihad. Conscription, however, is fard kifaya. So conscription into the military to go fight battles is fard kifaya. There must be enough people to undertake whatever needs to be done militarily, but everybody must be trained. So we're not like the kuffar who just want to go and enjoy our lives and ignore the world. All Muslims, of course, and especially all Muslims who are raised in a good Islamic society, all Muslims are going to want to be a part of this. It's not like the kuffar who hate it and they just want to go and enjoy life because they don't care about anything but themselves. No, we want to please Allah Azza wa Jal and getting training to make sure that you're capable of undertaking responsibilities within the military. Not only is a requirement, but everyone's going to generally want this. Under the Khilafah, everyone always wanted this. The vast majority of people, of course. Not literally every single person. And we're talking about men. Men are the ones. Muslim males over 15 years of age must go military training. But to become a part of the army and to go and to be a part of the structure of the military and then go out on expeditions and so on, that's conscription into the military. And this is fard kifaya. There must be enough people. If there's a really, really big battle and we need more people, then conscription, you keep on adding more people to the military as needed. Article 63, the army is divided into two parts. The reserves, who comprise all the Muslims capable of fighting, so literally all the men in society are reserves, and the regulars, who have paid salaries from the state's budget, like employees. Article 64, the army possesses flags and banners. The Khalifa gives the flag to whomever he appoints as the leader of the army, and the banners are represented by the chiefs of the brigades. Article 65, the Khalifa is the leader of the army. So the Khalifa is the leader of the army. Even though there's an Emir of Jihad, the Khalifa is actually the leader of the army, and the Emir of Jihad is a person who the Khalifa has appointed in position of responsibility over the management of the elements of the military. He appoints the commander-in-chief, a general for such brigade, and a commander for each division. The brigadiers and commanders appoint the remaining ranks of the army. Members of the general staff are appointed according to their military culture and are appointed by the general chief of staff. Article 66, the army comprises one army. The army is only one single army, located in different camps. Some of these camps must be located in different provinces and strategic locations, and some must remain mobile. They must permanently remain mobile as fighting forces. The camps are organized in numerous groups. Each one is given a number and a name, etc., etc. That's in terms of the management and so on. Article 66. It is necessary to provide the army with the highest possible level of military education and to elevate its intellectual level as far as possible, and to provide every member in the army with Islamic culture that enables them to have general awareness of Islam. So there must be an Islamic upbringing, there must be an Islamic education. They must also be educated and also militarily educated as well to understand military tactics and how to think in terms of military. Article 68, each camp should have a sufficient number of officers of the general staff who have attained the highest level of military knowledge and experience in devising plans and directing battles. The army as a whole should have as many officers of the general staff as possible. Article 69, it is necessary to provide the army with all the required armaments, supplies, and equipment so as to fulfill its task as an Islamic army. The next section, the next department within the state is the internal security. Article 70, the Department of Internal Security oversees everything connected with security and preventing that might threaten the internal security. So protecting the internal security of the state is one of the elements of Islam that we must protect. It's like protecting life. It's like protecting the deen, the Islam itself. It's like protecting people's wealth, protecting the internal security of the state. This is one of the components that Islam protects specifically. It's what's called the maqasid of the Sharia. It's one of the maqasid, actually. Some people did not include it, but it should have been included. It's one of the maqasid, one of the objectives of the Sharia. It protects internal security. It maintains the security of the country by means of police, and it does not use the army for this purpose except by permission of the Khalifa. So the police is the one who maintains internal security, not the military. The head of the department is called the head of the interior security. This department has branches in the provinces and so on. And the head of the directorate in the province is called Sahib al-Shurta, the head of the police. Article 71, police shurta, or there's a shurta or shurata, depending on how you pronounce it, is made up of two sections. I mean, shurta is more like a common way of saying it, and shurata is a more proper Arabic way of saying it. Military police, which follows the Emir of Jihad, so it's made up of two sections. One is the military police and falls under the War Department, and the police that work with the ruler to protect the Interior Department. Both these police sections are given special training and so on and so forth. Article 72, the most important matters that threaten the internal security, which the Department of Internal Security manages, are apostasy, transgression, rebellion, aggression against people's properties, aggression against people's lives and honor, dealing with people suspected of spying, to the warring disbelievers, so the kuffar who we're in a state of war at. So these are the number one most important things that the internal security monitors. People leaving Islam, so anybody who commits apostasy, this is considered a threat to the very well-being of the state. Transgression, which is people transgressing against each other and people transgressing against the state. Rebellion against the state. Aggression against people's property, so again, people like stealing and so on. Aggression against people's lives and honor, so murder, and also insulting people, and also accusing women of infidelity if they're chaste. So accusing women of being like like having extramarital relations and things like this. Dealing with people suspected of and dealing with people suspected of spying to the kuffar. So obviously looking out for spies within the Khilafah state. The next department within the Khilafah is the Department of the Exterior. Article 73, this department looks after all of the foreign affairs related to the relationship of the Khilafah state with foreign countries. And that includes matters related to postal messages and wireless messages and telecommunications and so on. The Department of Industry is the next department within the Khilafah state. Article 74, this department looks after all of the issues related to industry, whether it is heavy industry, such as manufacturing of motors, machinery, vehicles, and this is a very interesting article, and materiology and electronics industries, or if it's light industry, and whether the factories are related to the public properties or individual properties related to the war industry. All types of industries must be based on the war policy. So here's this. What's interesting about this particular, the Department of Industry, the thing that's interesting is understanding that all manufacturing of the state, whether it's heavy or light, must be convertible into the war policy. So all industries must be based on the war policy. So every industry in the state must be convertible into becoming production or machines, generally components of the war, the army. So if there's like, for example, a factory that makes, for example, cogs or washers or whatever, it must be convertible. There must be a plan in place on how to convert it to make bullets and to make shells and so on for the military, for military needs, tank panels or whatever else it might be. So the Department of Industry is under the control of. So there's the Department of Industry, but the Emir al-Jihad has a very strong relationship with the Department of Industry. The judiciary, which is the al-Qada, so it's the courts and so on. Article 75, judgeship is the pronouncement of the verdict in a binding way. So al-Qada is the pronouncement of the verdict in a binding way. It settles the dispute among people, prevents that which harms the community's rights, and eliminates the disputes between people, including between the people and the rulers, the Khalifa, and anyone in a lesser rank as well. Article 76, the Khalifa is to appoint a chief judge authorized to appoint, discipline, and dismiss judges within the administrative regulations. So the Khalifa appoints a chief judge, and he deals with the judges under him. Article 77, there are three types of judges. They are the judge who settles dispute among people in transactions, the muhtasib who settles the violations of the community's rights, and the judge of the court of unjust acts. So the judge who settles disputes among people in transactions, mu'amalat, and punishments, or uqubat, this is a judge for the regular courts. There's the muhtasib who deals with the violations against community rights, and then there's mahkamat al-madalim, which is the court, the judge of the court that deals with the injustice of the Khalifa or the state. The Khalifa himself or official of the state in terms of their management of the state, applying Islam on the state or on the people. Article 78, all judges must be qualified of being Muslim, male, Muslim, mature, sorry, not Muslim male, Muslim, mature, free, sane, just, so not openly fasiq, and they must be a jurist who are aware of how to apply the rules to incidents. Judges of Mahkamat Madalim must be male and a mujtahid. So a regular judge can be a female. So there's some Muslims say that they can't. This is wrong. A female can be a judge in the Khilafah, but in Mahkamat al-Madalim, only a man can be the judge, and because it's dealing with the Khalifa, and he must be a mujtahid. So he must be a person of deriving his own laws. He cannot be following someone else's opinion or somebody incapable of doing ijtihad, basically. Because there may be situations where he has to deal with a new situation and he must do ijtihad, and he can't go to someone else because he's the judge who's assigned with determining the hukm of Allah Azza wa Jalla in this matter. Article 79, the judge and the muhtasib may be given a general appointment to pronounce judgment on all problems throughout the state, or alternatively, they can be given appointment to a particular location and to give judgment on particular cases. Article 80, the courts should be comprised of only one judge who has the authority to pronounce verdict. One or more judges are, however, permitted to accompany him with only the authority of advising and assisting. They have no authority to pronounce verdict, and their opinion is not binding. On the judge who has the sole authority to give judgment. Article 81, the judge cannot pronounce verdict except during a court session. Evidence and oath are not considered except in a court session as well. So there has to be a court case, there has to be a due process. Article 82, it is permissible to vary the grades of courts in respect to type of cases. Some judges might be assigned to certain cases at particular grades, and other courts authorized to judge other cases. So there can be judges who are not as strong, can be assigned to smaller cases, things like traffic and so on. And then you might have judges who are they're significantly more knowledgeable to deal with very, very complicated issues separately, and you have separate courts for these things. Article 83, there are no courts of appeal or cessation because all judgments are of equal standing. So there's no such thing as an appeal. Once a judge passes judgment on something, this is the hukm of Allah Azza wa Jal. It's been judged upon. You don't get to appeal and so on. All judgments are of equal standing. If somebody comes in and gives another judgment, it's another judgment. So there's no such thing as appealing. In the kufr system, yeah, they have appeals because it's all man-made law. But in Islam, there's no appeals, basically. Article 84, the muhtasib is the judge who investigates all cases in the absence of an individual litigation involving the rights of the public that are non-criminal and not involving the hudud. Article 85, the muhtasib has the authority to judge upon violations at any place as soon as he gains knowledge of these violations without the need to hold a court session. A number of policemen are put at the muhtasib's disposal to carry out his orders and to execute his verdicts immediately. Article 86, the muhtasib has the right to appoint deputies to himself. Article 87 says that it's the judge of the Mahkamat al-Madalim is appointed to remove all unjust acts, meaning related to the topic of the committed by the Khalifa, governors, or any official of the state that have been inflicted upon anyone. Article 88 is the judge of the Mahkamat al-Madalim or is appointed by the Khalifa or the Qadi al-Qudat, the head judge. and then it talks a little more about that the accounting, disciplining, and dismissing of the of this judge of madhalim is carried out by the Khalifa, unless if there's an open case against the Khalifa and a judge is now either investigating or passing judgment, then the Khalifa cannot remove him or account him or anything like this. It has to be waited. He has to wait until all cases are complete before he can take any measures against Mahkamat al-Madhalim. Article 8, and of course, Mahkamat al-Madhalim has the right to remove the Khalifa. Article 89, there is no limit on the number of judges that can be appointed for the unjust acts. You can have as many judges as needed within that court. Article 90, Mahkamat al-Madhalim has the authority to dismiss any ruler, governor, or official of the state, including the Khalifa, in the case that where the removal of an unjust act requires it. Article 91, the Mahkamat al-Madhalim has the authority to investigate any case of inequity, whether it be connected with the officials of the state, the Khalifa's deviation from the divine rules, interpretation of the legislative text, and so on. Article 92, the jurisdiction of unjust acts. So the jurisdiction of Mahkamat al-Madhalim is not restricted to a case that somebody brought up. The court itself has the right to bring up a case against the Khalifa or against any element of the state if they see that something is going wrong. Basically, that's the meaning of it. Article 93, everyone, both prosecution and defense, has the right to appoint a proxy, whether a male or female, Muslim or not, to act on his or her behalf. There is no distinction in this matter between attorney and the individual granting power to the attorney, and so on and so forth. They can be given a salary, and so on and so forth. Article 94, it is permitted for the one who holds office, such as the Khalifa, Wali, official, muhtasib, and the judge of court unjust acts, or persons who have been vested with a specific responsibility, like a custodian or guardian, to appoint a person to his position as a proxy, again, a representative for him. Article 95, the contracts, transactions, and court verdicts that were concluded and executed before the establishment of the Khilafah cannot be overturned or raised again by the Khalifa judiciary unless the case is as follows. 1, if the case has an effect contradictory to Islam, then it must be raised again. Number 2, if the case is related to harm inflicted upon Islam and Muslims by the previous rulers and followers, then the Khalifa is allowed to raise the case again. And number 3, if the case is related to a property that still exists in the hands of its usurper. Basically, so the Khilafah will not reopen all the cases. Rather, there's only 3 situations where the Khilafah will reopen cases. Number 1 is that if something was applied and it contradicts Islam, then it can be reopened. If the case is related to the previous system hurt the people and took their belongings and so on, or was unjust towards them, then the Khalifa can reopen that case. Or if the case is related to a property that somebody stole and is still in their hands, so then that can be reopened so that you can say that, well, this person still has my stuff. And of course, you need to prove it and so on and so forth. We'll stop here, inshallah, and then we have one more video to complete the rest of the book, inshallah ta'ala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.